All right. Well, listen, good evening, everybody. It's Rob Walker. This is the Reston Planning and Zoning meeting for February. It's really hard to believe it's almost March. So listen, there are no applications before us tonight. So Fairfax County is here to provide a presentation. I believe it's on workforce housing. And so as opposed to doing anything administrative, I think we should let Fairfax have their kind of start us off tonight, and we'll do administrative things at the end, so we can let them all go. So, Megan, are you giving the presentation this evening?
I believe I am. Yep.
All right, great.
I do have a couple I believe I have at least one colleague here from the Department of Planning and Development. Yep, here's Leah, our partner agency. So may I go ahead and share my screen?
Absolutely, and welcome to our meeting.
Thank you. And good evening, everyone. My name is Megan Van Dam. I work for the Fairfax County Housing and Community Development Department, and I'm the director of the Affordable Housing Division. And tonight I'll be going through a few potential changes that we're looking at a pretty high level for the workforce dwelling unit for sale or homeownership program, and the associated policy. And I apologize, I'm just getting my screen together here. So these, and let me just make sure I've lost you. Do you all see my full screen?
Yes.
Okay. Just go back. It started midway through, so let me go back here. Pardon me. Okay, well, there you have it. You've seen everything now. So these changes that we are looking at were developed through a stakeholder task force that convened last year. They were presented to the board's housing committee in November, and the board directed us to take a look at how to best incorporate into the comprehensive plan. So as I said, I'll go over these changes that were recommended, and the context for them, the analysis that was done to develop them. I'll talk about how we're looking at incorporating them into the comprehensive plan. And then I'll get into next steps before we can talk through the any questions that you might have. The full document, I'll just say that before I start, we are here to kind of do an introduction. The full document with the text markup, we're looking to publish either towards the end of this week or early next week, so that you'll have more time to actually look at the document. You'll have about 30 days. We're looking at a 30-day review and comment period, and then we'll finalize the recommendations, likely do another round of outreach on them. We'll talk to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors later in the spring, with hearings in the summer. So I'll talk about that in a minute. So as I said, I'll go over the background of the issues and kind of what we were looking at with the for sale program, speak to the task force recommendations, talk about the plan amendment, and then open it up. So the first things first, we wanted to get a sense of where the housing market is right now, and has been over the past few years. We first looked at the median home sale prices, and here's a map that charts it over both the county as a whole, as well as different submarkets within the county. Overall, you can see that there is some volatility and some differences, different areas in the county, but typically there is an increase, and on a whole, the county is averaging over the past 5 years about a 23% increase in home sales. Now let's compare that to where incomes are, and this will give us a better picture of how, what is the buying capacity and the ability, how that's changed over time. So we looked at incomes and the average income within the county, as well as those same submarkets. This is a bit of a longer view, but you can still see that there has been a steady increase in incomes within the county, some a bit higher than others, but on average, you have about $131,000 in income per household in the county. And that is, unfortunately, though, that is not increasing at the same rate as home values. This is looking at the same period of time. We have about a 14% increase in income relative to that 23% increase in home sales prices. Here's a map. I'll send this presentation to you so that you all can look at it in your own time at your convenience. But I wanted to include the map of the sub areas that we looked at. And to zoom in a little bit more within the housing market as well, we looked at the average renter income within the county and how that compares to what is needed to purchase a home value. As you can see, renter income is quite lower than the average across the county at approximately $88,000, and that is challenging because this blue line represents the income required to purchase the median home. And there's quite a delta between what is needed to purchase a home versus what a renter can afford, or what is a renter making per year. And that's the increase is exponential as we look at the past couple of years. So let's talk a little bit about that, about housing affordability. When we talk about that, we are looking at what a person can spend if they're spending approximately 30% of the monthly income of their monthly income towards their housing. And unfortunately, as what we're seeing is that within the county, the costs associated with the mortgage, as well as associated housing costs, taxes, utilities, are typically higher than 30%. We, as you all know, we do have affordability, inclusionary zoning within the county, and we're here tonight to talk about the WDU program. And as you all are aware, this is a program that focuses on the development centers where there's plans for medium and higher density. Overall, within the county, there is a 12% the 12% expectation within any new development going through an entitlement process for workforce dwelling units that are 80 to 120% of AMI. And as you're also well aware, there are unique places in the county that have a bit of a different expectation, Tyson's being one of them, but also, of course, Reston with the sliding scale of the WDU inclusions compared to density. And when I'm talking about the area median income, if you're not familiar with it, that is the middle of the range, sort of the halfway point in the counties or in the regions income spectrum. And within the calendar year 2023, HUD defined the median income for the Washington metropolitan area as $152,000 for a family of four and $106,000 for an individual. And we zoomed in a little bit more in our housing market assessment to see how well someone who is making those at those income levels, what are they, do they have access to in terms of housing? So how much housing would they be able to afford if they were to spend 30% of their income on housing? And when we first looked at just an average two-bedroom home sales prices relative to what somebody would be able to afford at the different income tiers. These are the threshold amounts for what an affordable house would be at these varying income tiers. And as you can see, there is about 1 out of every 2 homes that have sold within the last 3 years would be available or affordable to a household making within that bracket of 100 to 120% of AMI. So that's quite a fair amount of homes that would be available at that income tier. But there's a diminishing amount of homes available for the lower income tiers. So 1 out of every 4 or so homes would be affordable to a household making 80 to 100% of the AMI. And then only 16% of those houses would be available if you were making 80% or below. And the availability of homes, affordable homes, is even more challenged when we look at larger units. So we also looked at what 3-bedroom homes would be available at an affordable price to our different income tiers. And as you can see, 1 in 3 homes, still a fair amount of homes would be available at the 100 to 120% of the income spectrum. But really only 14% of homes, of those larger family size homes, would be available to 100% of the area median income households or below. And we also looked at the WDU, what's happening with the sales in terms of both whether the sales needed incentives to move the unit, the seller needed incentives to move the unit, and also how long they sat on the market. And you can see that at the higher income tiers, that these houses often required, or most likely required, some type of seller incentive to move the unit, either reducing the price or offering closing costs or condo fee assistance. And then we also looked as far as with the workforce dwelling unit production, we also looked at what was being produced as compared to the policy. And this is the general countywide policy is, it has the recommendation for the 3 equal tiers at 80, 100, and 120%. But when we looked at both our production and our pipeline, that we were noticing that most units were actually being produced at the 180 and 100% income tiers, with a smaller proportion at the 120% AMI tier. And actually, we were also seeing that 70% income tiers were being produced in certain areas. And certainly this can reflect different proffer negotiations that happen during entitlements, or it could potentially be a recognition that there may be difficulty with the sales at that higher income tier. So as I mentioned, there's a task force that was convened. One of the primary challenges that was identified for them was the difficulty with the higher income tier, that 120% AMI tier, the ability to move the unit, meaning to get to closing, find a seller, get to closing, and how the incentives that were also being offered at that income tier, those income tiers, to move the units. And then there were also a few other policy and administrative improvements that were identified by the group as well. The lack of proportionality of units, unit types, meaning like the number of bedroom, or what the bedroom mix is for WDUs, as well as the limitations of geographic applicability for the policy, meaning that it's really only focused on those development centers, even though there are medium high density developments that are being approved nearby the development center or just outside. There are also some pricing challenges that were identified with the increasing AMI that we've seen over time, also with our tax rate increases, more interest rates going up. So we wanted to also take a look at that. In this presentation, I'll focus on the challenges with the proportionality and the geography that is related to our policy. There are some these other improvements and challenges that we were looking at. Those, because they're administrative, we're not focusing them on tonight, but I can certainly speak to them if you're interested. So there are three main task force recommendations. The first related to that affordability level. And there was a look at the the 120% AMI tiers and a question about if that was removed, what would that do? What would that do to the project economics? And overall, there was a marginal impact to the project economics, but meaning that that there would be a higher cost associated with the development, but at the same time, the program itself would remain feasible and it would be able to move forward. And then the task force also looked at what would happen if a new tier at 70% were to be created, since it was already being produced when we looked at the practice. And again, there was a cost associated with it to the project, but overall, if we were to remove the 120 and add in the 70, again, it still worked out that the projects can move forward. And there was a recognition that that also helped eliminate carrying costs as well as uh, some of the incentives. So it's sort of could right size the program. So they did recommend to shift the AMI tiers from the 80, 100, 120% to 70, 80, and 100. And overall for the countywide text, keeping that 12% recommendation and splitting it evenly across the tiers. The task force didn't look at all those unique recommendations, but I'll get to how we're looking at how this applies or how we would want to apply this to the Reston recommendations in just a couple slides. Recommendation number 2 related to that proportionality of the bedroom mix, trying to see if we could look at having a proportional bedroom mix between the workforce dwelling units and market rate units within a particular development. Again, the project economics were looked at, and there overall, again, there was an impact to development in our development scenarios, but it wasn't seen as sizable. But until we looked at developments with larger 4 or 5 bedroom units, and with those 4 or 5 bedroom unit developments, we did see larger challenges to the development scenarios that we looked at. So the task force, while they wanted to make sure that we were seeing proportionality within the WDUs so that we could produce more family-sized units within our program, we didn't want to make it so strict that we would end up sort of defeating our purpose by making projects infeasible. So the task force recommended to have proportionality, except flexibility when we had developments with those larger 4 or 5 bedroom units. And at that, if those came in, that we could have some flexibility to allow WDUs at 3 bedrooms or more to count for the 4 or 5 bedroom market rate units. We also recognize that sort of in the same vein, if we're still looking to create more opportunities for homeownership for families and larger families, that we would also want to add in minimum bedroom sizes, minimum living room sizes within the WDUs to match building code and match our Virginia construction code, so that we could truly make those units be attractive to families, because we are seeing WDUs that are coming in with very small bedrooms and living rooms that are not attractive for families, even though they have the bedroom count that might be on paper. And then the task force recommendation number 3, that looks at the applicability of the program. I mentioned that the program is focused on the development centers within the county, and the map on the right does have the development centers mapped in gray. And the task force wanted to look at the effect of expanding the program to sites that might be planned and zoned for the medium or high density 8 dwelling units and above, that would be outside of development centers. And the analysis that we looked at, again, looked at the sales prices, within the development centers versus outside on some of the selected sites that were planned to medium and high density. And they map first. We first mapped those. This is a rough map that we're working on refining, and especially want to get it at the district level so that everyone can see exactly where the sites are. But what we're noticing is that many of the sites that might be planned for the medium and high density are outside of the just outside of the development centers or along major transportation corridors. And what our analysis looked at was the sales prices between those two on select sites in the purple areas versus in the nearby gray areas. And there was a note that the sales prices, the land values were generally the same, whether you were inside or outside of the development centers. So the recommendation from the task force was to move forward and expand the program to those sites. So moving on to what the board asked us to do, I mentioned that they wanted us to incorporate the task force recommendations into the plan. They wanted us to evaluate the consistency between the for sale and rental programs to ensure that the programs are taking shape in the same way. They wanted again to look at the 100% AMI tier in addition to the 120% AMI tier to make sure both, that our program was right-sized and the most effective, serving those households that are most in need. And then also to make revisions to our supplemental document that speaks more specifically to program operations. And I'll just quickly run through these. This is just a summary of what we were just talking about, shifting the AMI ranges, so shifting the program levels from serving 80 to 120% households, or households earning 80 to 120% of the area median income to 70 to 100% AMI, and retaining that 12% commitment, looking at proportionality of bedroom mix, looking at expanding the geographic applicability to sites that are planned for medium and high density 8 dwelling units or greater. And then we also want to explore, this wasn't a task force recommendation, but we're also looking and doing some additional analysis on exploring whether or not we can establish parameters to guide a policy that allows for moving WDUs within a development that has multiple unit types. We'd like to try to understand that a little bit better, why it happens, and whether or not we could perhaps put some guardrails on it for the time being, because we're losing homeownership opportunities if we're moving WDUs within the same development out of the townhouses and into multifamily or into stacks. And we're also losing that type of unit from the program. And then specifically in Reston, we're trying to sort of we want to make sure we're right sizing the program in Reston, but we're offering to retain the sliding scale, but then we would revise the table, the income tiers to reallocate the units. So for this one, here's the Reston table that speaks to the workforce dwelling units. And as you can see, the 100 to 120 tier would be eliminated, and then those percentage of units would be reallocated to a new tier to the down to the 70% AMI tier. And then we also have some editorial updates that we're looking at. updating numbers that speak to projected housing needs, updating terminology, and then also doing some housekeeping and cleanup within the area plans to remove repetitive guidance in favor of making reference to the countywide policy. And then also we've found that there's some language that speaks to the preservation policy in the area plans. There's a countywide policy recently adopted last summer, and we just would like to have, again, the area plans really speak to that preservation policy. These are all editorial, so there aren't substantive changes to policy within these updates. So I'll just say in conclusion, I mentioned right-sizing the program to better match the affordability levels with our community's needs. We're trying to reduce the carrying costs and need for incentives for sellers. We want to ensure greater predictability for the shifted affordability levels, and that will match how the current practice actually is shaping up as well. And then we're pairing the AMI shifts with process improvements. So looking at ways to expedite some of the work that we're doing behind the scenes with the sellers to get the units out to market as quickly as possible, and then sold as quickly as possible. And then I also mentioned the editorial plan changes. So with that, I know that was a lot of information, and I should say there's one more slide with the timeline. I mentioned we're doing sort of high level outreach right now to introduce the topics. We're going to be publishing the text within the next week or so. We'll continue our outreach we have open houses planned once the text is published to walk through it in more specifics and get additional feedback on it. The public comment period, we're assuming it's going to be about, or we're planning for it to be about 30 days on the draft text. And then we have a housing committee in late April in front of the Planning Commission. And then we are looking to publish a staff report after we finalize the recommendations in May. We have the June housing committee with the board, and then hearings in the summertime. So again, I know that was a lot of information, but I'm happy to go back to any of it or answer any questions that y'all might have.
Megan, thank you. Hey, can somebody from the committee take over this meeting? I've got to run to a family emergency here. I'm getting a.
Oh no.
So I tried to text Mike, but can you guys run without me?
Yep.
All right.
Yes, I'm here, Rob.
Family
I'm gonna
emergencies
leave.
come first, Rob.
Thank you.
Lynn can do it.
Thanks,
She's an
Tammy.
expert at running meetings.
Okay, so, well, I put my hand up first, but I'll take my hand down in the interest of, if I'm running the meeting, I'll save my question for last. So I see that, Matt, you've got your hand up for a question.
I do. Yeah, a quick question. You mentioned in your presentation that you were looking to define the minimum sizes of bedrooms and living areas. Are you anticipating that be something that's larger than what's defined in the IRC and the IBC codes right now?
No, in fact, they would be the basis. I believe it's 100 square feet is the minimum.
That sounds right. I think it's
Yeah.
100 for living areas and like 70 for bedrooms with a minimum width of 7 feet, but I don't
Right.
have the code in front of me right now.
Yeah, the only difference that I would say is that I think for the bedrooms, if you are I mean, we do look at household size. So if a bedroom would serve more than one person, that 70 feet, I think, is increased by 50 feet per additional person.
That makes sense. I mean, 70 feet is tiny.
70
I would
square feet,
never
yeah.
design one that was that small, but I was just kind of curious what you were using to define that.
Okay, did I answer your question, Matt?
It does answer my question. Thank you.
Okay, you want to lower your hand or you want me to do it?
I can do that.
Tammy Petrine, you're up next with the question.
Thank you. I have a question. First of all, in the county, what is the gross number what are we talking about in numbers of dwelling units for WDUs? How many are there in these, development areas? How many are we talking about? 50,000, 550? What is it?
I wish it was that many. Overall, the ADU and the WD program has about 5,400 units within both programs. But right now, within this particular program, the workforce dwelling unit program that is for sale, we only have about 120 or so units that are that have been produced. And there are about 100 more or so in the pipeline. So it's not, there aren't that many. It's quite small.
Yes, and that's where I was going. We've had a huge study of this, lots of debating about what AMI level. We're going from below 60 to 120. Who in the world ever came up with 120? If you've got 120 AMI, you don't need a subsidy. So it seems to me to be crazy. Who was on the task force, Megan?
Sure. So I do have if you're interested, the final report has the specific names, but
Okay.
the report, or sorry, the task force is, I would say it was equally balanced between developers who are producing or representing those who are producing the WDUs in their private developments. Well, we had affordable housing providers and advocates kind of split evenly, and then there were a few staff as well. And it
Okay.
was co-chaired by Planning Commissioner Candace Bennett and our Deputy Director for Real Estate Finance, Anna Shapiro.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful.
Okay, and I'll put the task force recommendations in the chat so you all have it.
Oh, terrific.
Or the final report, I should say.
That is super. And we're still sticking with, I'm interested in this 12% of for sale. I didn't think that was the statistic. I thought it was 12% total, which was for sale and rental. Is it for sale 12%? Is that for real? Because I don't know how we come up with our 120 units if it's 12% of units over 50, in projects of over 50 DUs that have to subscribe to this.
So it's 12% of total units for the county. In Reston, it does go up depending on the FAR. So you might have 14, 16%. But yeah, that is the percentage. And I mean, there are many larger stacked townhouse developments that are coming through across the county that are creating that 120 unit count. We also have a few condo developments as well, although those are fewer, I would say, than the townhouses.
Is that 12%, does that include only for sale? Or is that both for sale and rental?
The rental program falls under a different system.
Okay.
So the rental program right now, if you're a developer who's building a rental development, depending where you are in the county, there's anywhere from, it could be as low as 8% of your units up to 15%, depending on where you are.
Terrific.
But that's serving a slightly lower income tier. It's serving 60 to 80% of the area median income.
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. I appreciate your work on this. It is very complicated. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Next, we've got Dan Delusion.
Yes, I have two questions. So I'm getting an echo back. In the ranges for prices and for incomes, Dulles Corridor, which is out west, Tyson's, which is out east, there were no numbers for Reston. Are they available anywhere?
No, we didn't look at Reston. We had to put some boundaries on the analysis with our consultant, and we were trying to pick different areas throughout the county representing somewhat different types of development. So we did elect to look at the Dulles corridor, and then we looked at Chantilly since there were so many townhouses and stacked townhouses, Richmond Highway because of the unique situation since overall the incomes are typically lower there, and then Tyson's to get a sense of some of the Silver Line development and the multifamily that was coming in. I think there was a general sense as well when we were not to be perfectly frank, when we were trying to scope this, we also recognized that that the Reston task force was underway, and so we weren't quite sure where what direction the task force would take with the recommendations. So we wanted to be respectful of that work, and we thought that by doing sort of the ends with Dulles and Tyson's, we would get a little bit of an overlap as far as some of the sales prices, and a feel for what a higher density development and what the home sales might look like and the incomes might look like.
I'm actually very concerned about that because Reston has such a unique mix in such a small area of both types of settings. Not all Centerville, not all Dulles, not all Tyson's, and all in a condensed area with a strong tech work environment. So it's actually a very unique community from an AMI perspective and from a home sales perspective. Is there any possibility that the consultants could go back and pull those numbers? Or is it too late in the game to look at Reston separately?
I think at this point, I mean, I can always figure that out. I mean, I guess we have to.
We're putting this into the Reston comprehensive plan. So at a certain level, I would feel like Reston's numbers should be properly represented.
Okay. All right. I'll go back and see what we can do.
Okay.
Okay.
My other tiny quick question is, in other words, so the benefit for a developer of reducing the FAR with waivers is to reduce the number of WDUs that they would be required to create? If you reduce the FAR, you don't have to have as many WDUs?
Let me make sure I understand you correctly. So are you speaking specifically in Reston then? Really?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean this, and Graham may be able to speak he's also from the planning department. But from what I understand it, the sliding scale is really is pairing, yeah, there we go. Pairing the FAR with a percentage of WDUs. So I think the way to look at it is as you increase the intensity, you're also increasing the expectation for how many WDUs you have. But I guess if you did look at it in the reverse, that if you do lower your FAR, then you do have a lower expectation. There is a minimum of that 12%. So you can't lower it too much so as not to do any. And Graham, please add in if you.
Yeah, no, I think you said it right. And I would just go back to something that Tammy had asked about a couple of minutes ago, which was, clarifying for sale versus rental and what the change would entail. So as a part of the Reston planning study that concluded last year, we did look at the rental side of the program and had, ran the numbers in terms of the number of WDUs that could be provided and exchanged with bonus. And so that really kind of focused on the rental side. And we concluded, as a part of that analysis with the Reston task force, that 12% could be retained while also shifting down the AMIs. And so the change that we're looking at here is really only focusing on the for sale side, both within the TSAs and the non-TSAs. So the sliding scale that is that Megan referenced here applies in those Reston TSAs where you can get increased density. And as your density increases, you are, there is an expectation for a higher percentage. But as Megan indicated, if you're less than a 1.0 FAR, that 12% is kind of your floor.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank
Next
you.
up
And,
is
and
Michelle
I think Lynn
Kimmel.
knows where I'm going with that one.
Next up is Michelle Kimmel. Michelle?
Hi, I'm just wondering, when you're saying that you're going to edit the area plans, language on preservation, can you be more specific on how you would change Reston's plan?
Let me see here.
And just to give you a bit more background, preservation of our existing market and WDUs and ADUs were exceptionally important in the discussion of affordable housing. So it would be good to make sure that, we're not going to erase any efforts that were very much intentional there, because we do have a number of specifically, market affordable units that, again, I can't overstate this, are exceptionally important to the Reston area. And we don't want to see those leave, which is something that can often happen.
So we haven't made any editorial changes to Reston related to preservation. And I'll just say that the preservation guidance that the county adopted speaks to what you're talking about, which is the no net loss of affordable housing. And if in the case that there is a redevelopment proposal that is planned, that we would look to having any units that are existing on the site, that they would be replaced and committed to within the county's programs,
Right.
at the existing levels that they are right now.
But the question is, are they going to remain in Reston?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, we don't have.
that was our greatest concern, was we don't want to see these units leave Reston.
Yeah, yeah, I'm just looking at the markup, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. But right now, we didn't propose any changes to any of the Reston guidance except for that table.
The table. Okay, so all other guidance in the current recently adopted plan would remain the same. The only thing that changes in the Reston area plan is the table.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And you'll see that when the text is published, we'll send out an announcement through all of the different contacts whom we've been working with to schedule these meetings, so that you'll be aware when it is published.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Michelle. Dick Kennedy? If you'd unmute yourself.
Yes, I think I have I? Yes. Okay, you're hearing me?
Yes.
Okay. Megan, you've done an excellent job describing a good bit of very needed housing. But in a way, I think we all have to understand that there's even a level below the people that the areas that we're focusing on, and it is we've got to be arguing for housing choice vouchers at the same time to get down to the probably 20 or 30% of our households that are needing something that's in the 30% area for rentals, not to even consider home ownership. So that's another part of this whole thing. Is there any way you want to comment on that, or what? It's up to you.
I'll just say that, I'm not an expert in the housing choice voucher, but I'll just say it's a yes and we fully support that. I mean, I think it is really important for us to have as many property owners begin to accept the housing choice vouchers and be comfortable with that as possible, and that we can have them spread across the entire county, so that we can have access for families at those lower incomes that you mentioned, have those accessible to all parts of the county. This, I would say, it's a sister program, because it is, instead of having the voucher, which would be paying the market value, this is a subsidy through the private property owner. So it's a bit of a different structure. So I would just say I agree with you about the need to really incentivize property owners to have the housing choice vouchers as part of their rental programs, and then also have this sister program to have that diversity of income throughout the developments that we have.
Right, and I just, for our whole group, I want to, sometimes we forget that we've also got a large need for seniors who are not working anymore, and also persons with disabilities that need other kinds, in their life, they're having different sources of income that just needs to be addressed, and we're not even, we still also have are short to somewhat, where we've got a very good program for the homeless, but it needs to even be better and bigger. So that's another thing that I just wanted to throw in, that we're talking tonight, and Megan was asked to talk about this program that is a good thing, but it's the middle class of our county, and there's more below that. So that's for people to think about, and as we try to deal with the state and the federal government in terms of the getting to as many people as possible. So any other comments you'd want to make on that? But I just want that out there for just the general background, is when we think about affordable housing, the word affordable housing has so many different meanings that we've got to take that into account too. Some people will say, well, that's affordable housing, but we're talking about 120% or 100% of the median income. And in this county, we can't live with that for a good third of all the people here. So enough said.
Okay, thank you, Dick. Matt, is that an old hand or new hand?
That's a new hand. I thought of a new question as Dick was speaking.
All right. Okay, Matt.
This has been interesting to me, because I actually agree with the idea and the approach that, yes, and there's a lot of different types of housing at different income levels, but the for sale, 80%, 100% AMI is something I'm not as, I guess, familiar with. Maybe that's why there's only 100 or so units in the county. But can you explain a little bit more to us about what the restrictions are on those properties if someone were to buy, a for sale condo at 70% AMI? I'm just kind of curious how that works.
I think that's a great question. The program is modeled similar to the affordable dwelling unit program, which is at this 70% AMI tier. So if you're familiar with that program, it's structured very similarly. So if you are a a buyer, you have to go through a qualification process where you're submitting income documentation to verify where you qualify at. There are home ownership education training programs that you go through as well. And when you are sort of moving through the purchasing process and buying a unit, you are committing to living in the home for 30 years as your primary residence, and you have to go through an annual certification to ensure that you're living in the home and to legally say that you are. You also have to, and I should say, if you do live in the home for that 30 years, then you are able to sell the home at a market rate, and you split whatever equity is gained with the county, and that money goes back into the Housing Trust Fund, so we can leverage it to purchase and to support additional affordable housing initiatives. If you opt to sell the home, or you are no longer living in it and you want to sell the home, you do have to recommit the home into the program. So you sell it at the original price that was set for it, plus some growth related. Right now, it's related to inflation, and then you sell it to a new income qualified buyer, and that commitment for that unit renews for another 30 years. So it's a renewable 30-year covenant on these homes.
Well, that's fascinating. I not to be this kind of stick in the mud though, but with those levels of, I guess, qualifications and restrictions on basically being able to, take advantage of increases in the value of property and basically making a return on your investment, I can see why these would be difficult to sell, especially if you were making 80 to 100% of the AMI. Because in theory, if you're making 100% of the AMI, you could just go out and buy, you know, a rent, a unit in a condo building without any of these restrictions on it. So why would you opt in to having these restrictions that are going to limit your ability to make money in the future? I think that's, if it was me, it would be a very big sticking point that would dissuade me from trying to invest in a unit, even if I was getting, in theory, a lower starting price for it, if it was going to keep me from being able to get a return on my investment in the future.
You're absolutely correct, and I think that's why we were having so much trouble with the homes that were set set for the income tiers at up to 120% of AMI, because what we found was that 1 out of every 2 home could be available on average for that income tier. But if you are making 100% of AMI, if you are making the area median income, you really only have a chance if you're looking. This is the 2-bedroom prices, but
Yeah.
if you cap your spending on 30% of your earnings, then you really only have about 1 out of every 4 homes on average that's available to you. And if you're a household that's at that area median income and you're looking, so you have a family, you want a larger home, 3 bedrooms or more, you really only have 1 out of 10 homes that are available. So while I think the general notion, and I think my immediate reaction, or one's immediate reaction, is saying, well, if you're making the area median income, you really don't need a subsidy. Unfortunately, the data shows that you might be making what is considered an average wage, or a sort of the midpoint range, but they're just not, because of the cost of housing and how it's increased over time so tremendously, that there aren't homes available for you to purchase. So that does make the housing home ownership opportunities much more difficult for even households that are earning a good wage. So that is a challenge.
Thank you for the thorough answer. That's enlightening. I wasn't aware of, how that was actually working. So thank you.
Yeah, Tammy, you've got your hand up. You're muted. Tammy.
Yeah,
There you go.
Megan, has this changed? It used to be that if you went 30 years, and I don't think we've had any that have got are 30 years old. If you went 30 years, you owned that unit and you could sell it for market rate. If you're short of the 30 years, then my understanding, and I've talked to John Carter a lot about this, then you have to share your equity increase with the county, and the home does revert into the supply of for sale WDUs. But please check that 30-year. I think that 30-year is a get out of jail free. As Matt says, that would make no sense if you had maintained a home for 30 years and all of a sudden you're splitting your equity. That makes no sense at all. I don't think that's correct, and please check that. A question that I had from your comment was, you mentioned you had a consultant work with you. Who is the consultant?
It's HRNA advisor. Uh-oh, I'm echoing.
Okay.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes. And say it again, please.
HRNA advisors.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. I've got a little echo too. Are there any other committee members that have questions? Committee members that have questions for Megan? Do you have your hand up again, Tammy? Okay. Okay.
Desperately trying to take it down. Thank you.
Looks like we have one more question from Jan, visitor.
I'm sorry, and I think it's a quick question. Was any consideration given to setting the WD numbers at the number of units built as opposed to the FAR? I know an example where they went with the 12%, but as a result, the number of units is only 8% of the units being built.
Yes.
Was there any result?
I don't know that I understand the question. I mean, in the WDU program, you would, I mean, the 8%, is it a rental development or is it a
For purchase
sale?
development. For sale.
I mean, is it, and it's, maybe we could get the name, talk with you offline, because I'm not aware that they would be able to do that unless there was some type of special negotiation during the proffers. So that, I mean, of course.
Lynn has my email address.
Yeah.
So does Mark, so please.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then we can also talk with you about the question that you had about the housing market analysis in Reston.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Megan, if you want to put your email in the chat for everyone, that would be great. Jan can pull it from there.
Great. Oh, that's a great idea. Thank you.
But thank you. Thank you, Jan. Any other questions? Well, I was the first one that had my hand up, so I'm going to ask my question. And I do appreciate the questions that went before me, because some of my questions were answered. But I appreciated the recommendation number 1 that came out of this report. And I was just wondering if 60% AMI was considered as a lower tier. I know you said you got rid of the 120 and went down to 70, but I was just wondering if there was any discussion about the efficacy of going down to 60%.
The concern about going down that far in the workforce was because it would begin to overlap with our ADU program, the sister program.
Right,
that said, I think I'll say that we are trying to see if there are opportunities for some additional analysis that came up. The task force did not suggest going down to 60%. I mean, I think that was sort of the balance that they were looking at between making the projects still feasible while also serving lower incomes with the different members of the task force. That was kind of the balance that they struck. That said, we have heard that sentiment from others. So I think we are trying to see what opportunities there are for some level of additional analysis that might be really significant with our consultants. And if we can work that in, I think we'll try to see at least how that, if not becoming a recommendation, we could at least take a look at that analysis.
Okay, thank you. And was there any discussion of maybe adopting the Reston sliding scale as applicable to the rest of the county?
Well, Reston, I think, certainly benefits from all the wonderful transportation options, and I think the intensities sort of pair with that, and as well as the wonderful amenities that are offered within Reston. I will say apart from Tyson's and only a few other areas within the county, do we have sort of the same characteristics with the level of density and the transportation access. And all the different amenities. I don't, at this point, we hadn't looked at the sliding scale, but I will say that other areas like Huntington, which also benefits from having transit access, is at 15% as their standard. So development in there has that flat 15%. Tyson's, which has the transit access, also goes up to 20%. So it's a little bit. It also sort of has somewhat similar expectations with higher levels of WDUs as a flat expectation. And so there are other areas that sort of get to where Reston is, but we don't have that right. We don't have that as part of our recommendation now.
Yep.
Graham, I don't know if
Thank
you want
so
to
much.
answer that as well.
One just additional bullet, Lynn, to add to what Megan indicated. The Dulles Suburban Center does have the sliding scale of FAR to WDU,
That's
so
true. Yeah.
that would kick in for the last Silver Line stop in Fairfax at the Innovation Centers.
Thank you, Graham.
Thanks. Thank you, Graham.
And I just wanted to say this was an excellent presentation. So thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
I see one more hand. I'm sorry for interrupting, but I don't know. I can't see whose it is.
Is that your old
Let's see.
hand, Jan? Yep, I think it's an old hand. Yep. Okay, no?
Yes, and thank you from all of us for coming out tonight and sharing your information, because it's very tricky and it's important. And so thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Commissioner Kennedy.
Thank you. Okay. Well, I think that does it for the presentation. And Megan, you said that you would make that the presentation itself, you'll make available to the committee.
Yes, we can send that. We can send the presentation over. There's some appendix slides in there that you might be interested in. It dives a little deeper into the recommendations, but we can send that over today or tomorrow, and then we'll also send out that announcement when the text is ready.
No, thank you, and thank you, Graham. So do we want to move on to our administrative items? If you don't have to sit through Megan and Graham. If y'all want to enjoy your evening, you don't have to sit through our administrative.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I'm going to have to pull up Rob's agenda. Let's see.
There were highlighted. This is my
Hey, Mike.
the two administrative issues were to approve the previous minutes and just an announcement on the March 4th meeting on the 4th.
I don't know that I saw the minutes distributed. Did I miss them? in the last meeting?
They were included. They were included. Email.
Yeah, they were on
Okay.
2/19.
So is there a motion to accept the minutes as written?
I so move. This is Tammy.
Tammy, is there a second?
Second, Mike Jennings.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's approved. And what was the second one, Mike?
Yeah, there's a meeting March 4th at South Lakes High School, 7 p.m. to discuss the 4 SCAs that are in process. And so that's in Rob's agenda. I'm not going to, he had links, so.
That echo is really annoying.
Lots of feedback, right?
Does someone have two systems running in the same room with microphones on?
Sometimes you just have to mute yourself if you're not actively speaking. That can cause it.
Thank you, Michelle. Well, it's gone now. Okay, those were the two items, Mike.
Yes.
I wanted to, before we adjourn, I just wanted to thank you all for your feedback and inputs into the website. Tammy, you've got your hand up. I was going to go through some of the changes. That were made.
Yes, please. Can we go briefly through the website? And I have one comment. Thank you.
Yes. So I'm not going to share my screen because the changes were pretty minimal. There was one recommendation. I did get Rob's process materials. So the title of the tab of where we fit with Fairfax County was changed to look more professional by saying process. So if you go to the website, you will see that that tab is now changed to just say process, and it's just more professional than where we fit. And then the resources were more appropriately moved back to the resources tab, and the resources that are available to the applicants. One of the other discussions that came up was the listing of the committee members. And I think, Tammy, I think it was you that said that you really think that it's important for email addresses to be available to people that are submitting applications. And I know you had your you want to talk about that?
Yes, please. I have had experience on several organizations that try to limit the committee members' access. That is appropriate if the committee member doesn't want the public to have their email. I do want the public to have their email. I had an instance today where I'm trying to get messages to the airport authority or airport advisory committee that I sit on, and the Fairfax County employee is not forwarding my email to the other members. We haven't had an in-person meeting yet where I can go around and get those. So, so that I can directly interact with other committee members to ask questions. So for this purpose of this organization, I don't know what other people want to do, but I would like my email to follow my name. If other people choose not to do that, I don't have a problem with that, but I do want mine there. And that's, I think, a compromise that if you want to do it, you can, but you don't have to do it. And it gives transparency to the public that they can get a hold of somebody on the committee if they choose to so on and so forth. And I happen to have everybody's email on this committee from previous years where we did provide that. So, you know, I'm comfortable that if I have a question for Dick on housing, I can get a hold of him and ask that question. Or William on green roofs, I can ask him the questions. But that's just me. So, and I'm so sorry that Rob is not here. I'm sort of worried and I hope he's okay. But maybe we table this until
Yeah.
next time.
That's a good idea.
Thank you.
But I did share the website, so it was not process, it's function. So the Reston planning and function has been added. So I will stop sharing and adjourn. Your motion to adjourn.
No, wait a minute. Bill Penniman has a question.
Bill.
I something had some organizations set up email addresses through the organization, so it's not your personal email, but it's an organizational email. Is that something that's possible through our website? Yeah, that might solve it. And anyway, we can defer to next time for discussion.
Yeah, I sent out pricing on that, so I'm in favor of keeping this free. I mean, I've paid for the domain, and the website is free. Michelle, you've got your hand up.
If you want an email that's not your personal email, you could just go and make a Gmail that's like Bill Penniman Reston PNZ at Gmail. So that might be one thing if we all wanted to have uniform Gmail accounts so it looked more official, we can put that together. This might also help with anybody who's just hesitant to provide their personal information. That's what I would recommend.
That's a great idea. Thank you. Does that make sense, Bill?
It would be nice if they could do it in some consistent fashion. However, that's a possibility. You know, I'm not proliferation.
The RPZ Penniman, RPZ Petrine, RPZ Jennings, RPZ Peggy.
Whatever. Again,
in Gmail. Yeah. Okay. We'll table that for when Rob is back.
Can make it also easier to sort your own email if you get a lot of emails in general.
Yep. True. Okay. Anything else that we need to discuss? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, William.
Thank
I
you,
second.
William. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Good
Good night,
night.
everyone.
Enjoy this
Thanks,
good
Mark.
work.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye.